Now you're probably thinking, Mark, your background looks a little bit different, and you would be right. And I'll tell you why in a second. Hello everybody, welcome to and welcome back to my channel, Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I hope so much that you're doing very well indeed. And yes, the eagle-eyed amongst you may well have noticed that some books are missing from the top shelf directly behind me, where that fantastic photograph of me and the wonderful Elvis resides. Now, the books that are missing are the Oxford World Classics books, and the reason they're missing is because I'm going to show you my Oxford World Classic books, all of them that I've got. There's not a super huge amount, but there's a few to get through, and the reason is a few people have asked me to go through the books that they can see behind me, and I thought it'd be nice to go through all my classics and the different editions of the classics that I've got. So in no particular order, let's go through these Oxford World Classics. Now there's a bit of a tower beside me which hopefully won't fall down. So first up we have Thucydides' The Peloponnesian War, which I read in a wonderful group read. I want to say maybe it was last year, but it was actually enjoyable. I mean, people find Thucydides quite dry in comparison to the likes of Herodotus, but actually I enjoyed it and thought it was a decent read. I also have the Landmark edition as well, but before I got that, I had got this one by Oxford World Classics, and I do like Oxford World Classics. I like this flexibility of them, so you don't feel like you're going to really crack the book too much when you open them, and they always generally have interesting artwork there on the cover. So that's Thucydides. Next up we have, it's teetering on the brink, we shall say. Next up we have Tacitus and his histories, which I've yet to get to, but perhaps during Historathon next year it could be well worth giving Tacitus a go. Certainly according to Oxford World Classics here, Edward Gibbon was a fan, but I don't know what that says about it really. But again, I think quite a cool cover. So yeah, unfortunately the light is pretty appalling. You can see behind me it's 9:30 in the morning, but I've actually got a light on because it's completely grey and pouring with rain outside. Typical autumn, I suppose. So next up we have one of my favourites here, and this is Catalis, the complete poems. You can see it there again. Lovely artwork on the cover of the Oxford World Classics. And what's nice about this edition is it does include the parallel Latin text. So should you be so inclined, you can read Annales Volusi Cacata Catara instead of reading Volusius Annals paper crap. Catalis being as free with his words as always. But again, I think it's a nice little addition there from Oxford World Classics. Up next we have Aristophanes. Aristophanes, of course, sorry, it's just a joke. I don't know, because I once complained about people mispronouncing things, and then like immediately after, I don't know why, I just went off and said, yeah, I've got the book Birds by Aristophanes instead of Aristophanes. But yeah, but it does include some other plays as well, but I have yet to get to that. It is on the list for sure as one of the works that I feel I absolutely must read, and I hope 2024 will prove to be the year where I actually knock through some of the books that I haven't read. And up next we have a book I've dipped in and out of, which has proved to be rather entertaining at times at least, and this is Gaius Pliny or Pliny the Younger's complete letters there, which is in a nice translation by P.G. Walsh. And what I do like is these editions often do include extra texts or, maps, bibliographies, indices, textual notes, explanatory notes, and that kind of thing. They're not always necessarily easy to use because they don't necessarily use a number system, but some of them tend to use an asterisk only, which kind of makes it hard to find if you want to look things up after the fact, but still. Staying with the classics, I have another Roman, Suetonius' Lives of the Caesars, and this is a translation here by these problem with these things is they have to focus, don't they, by Catherine Edwards. I do have Robert Graves' translation somewhere else, and I haven't read this one, but I have read Robert Graves' version, which I think, if I remember rightly, is in the Penguin Classics range. So next up we have a Stendhal, the Red and the Black, which I haven't read yet, in a translation here by Catherine Slater. But if I follow that up with the other Stendhal I've got in the Oxford World Classics, which I have read, I read it this year, which is the Charterhouse of Parma there. Different translator. If I can get it to focus, it annoys me, but there we go. Different translator. This one is Margaret Malden. I found this great fun, really. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought it was an excellent book and would heartily recommend it to everybody. And it seemed a very nice translation, but I don't really have anything to compare it to. Next up, we've got 3 plays, a trilogy from the wonderful Beaumarchais, the Figaro trilogy. Of course, the works that inspired operas. The Barber of Seville, The Marriage of Figaro, and The Guilty Mother, which is a little bit lesser known, but The Marriage of Figaro is my favourite opera ever, and I never get tired of listening to it, and it was kind of wonderful to actually read the play. I've only read The Barber of Seville and The Marriage of Figaro. I haven't got to The Guilty Mother yet. I'll have to remedy that. Oh, I don't know if you heard that noise. That's the police outside my window pulling somebody over. Next up, we have a classic of American literature, which I still haven't read. I've read Tom Sawyer, but I've yet to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn there by Mark Twain. But I do find these Oxford World Classics so much smarter than the older versions that they have. So I really am a big fan and would like to have more, although I do have more Penguins than I have Oxford World Classics. But we'll probably come to those at some other point. Next up, we have one of my Victorian favourites, which I did a group read of my first summer on BookTube, or perhaps it was my first Victober on BookTube, which is R.D. Blackmore's wonderful tale of Lorna Doone. So if you haven't read it, give it a go. It's great fun. It's set during the 17th century, end of the 17th century, with the around the time of the Monmouth Rebellion, but wonderful story that takes place in the West Country of England during that time. So next we can move on to the wonderful Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. Probably my favourite of Scott's works, but then having said that, I've only read 2. So, however, I did plan to remedy that because I got a hold of some other works by Scott, including The Antiquary, which I think would be quite interesting, seeing as it's set, of course, around books, though I have heard people say it's quite boring, which I rather hope not. I guess we shall see if and when I get to it. We have Scott's other quite famous work, Waverly, which is a story set during the Jacobite rebellion, and it may well be, I'm not sure, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's the first of his novels, as they were often known as the Waverly novels, and apparently, even according to the back of this, it is case in point of Sir Walter Scott inventing the historical novel in its modern form with this novel, Waverly, which I have kind of started and enjoyed what I read, but for other reasons, I don't know why, I didn't continue, probably because it was just one of those things where I was flipping through it and just read a little bit, but then decided I'd have to save it for later. Now, I thought I had some more Scott there, but looks like I'm wrong, probably in some other editions. But next up we have Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which I know is quite a divisive book. A lot of people don't like it. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And I think I don't know, I wasn't particularly disturbed by it. I found, that the main characters are extremely unlikable, but the standout character to me, which actually brought a bit of humour to an otherwise quite dark work, was the maid, or the housekeeper. But I read this the summer before last, again in a group read, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So it rather surprised me. I thought it wouldn't be my cup of tea, but then, like Pride and Prejudice, which I also didn't think would be my cup of tea, it turned out to be so. Next, I have Honoré de Balzac's Eugénie Grandet, which I haven't read, but perhaps I will get to, because this year I've been trying to read a work of classic French literature a month. Hasn't been going super well, but it did introduce me in the early part of the year to Balzac, and I've read 2 of his works now, and I really enjoyed them. So I'm looking forward to getting through some more of his. Next up we have du Maurier, but not Daphne. We have her grandfather, George du Maurier, and his work Trilby, which I haven't got to yet, but certainly plan to during the course of 2024. We've only got a couple left now, so hopefully this pile won't fall on me. Then we have Chandeleurs de la Cloche, Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Dangerous Liaisons here, in translation by, if we can... No, are we going to focus a little bit? Maybe not quite. I guess it wants to focus on something else. But in translation by Douglas Parme. Should have been read during the month of September, but it wasn't even started. I will try to get to it before the end of the year, but we shall see. Now we have Guy de Maupassant, A Life, one of his few novels, of course very well known as a short story writer. This is translated by Roger Pearson. It's quite a short work, and I think I'll be able to get to that one in December. Actually, perhaps it's supposed to be in November, perhaps, that I had planned on that, but I could well get to it because it's not particularly long. Then our penultimate one is Voltaire's Candide and Other Stories. Yeah, not a huge fan of the illustration. I don't know why. Kind of reminds me of those Moomins kind of illustrations, but I don't know. I wasn't not a massive fan of that. However, I did quite enjoy the book. It was quite humorous, surprisingly humorous for 300-year-old work, and certainly some memorable moments in it. I didn't read the other stories yet. I have read what's it called, Micromagus as well, which I read, I think, for raiding Project Gutenberg, which is an event in November. Read that last year, and that was actually quite interesting and easy read. But Candide itself is very short, and I would say well worth it. Well worth it. It's one of those greats of literature that should be read, and it isn't really a chore to get through. And then finally, another one of the French books that I read this year and actually enjoyed is a play, and it's Edmond Rostand's Cyrano de Bergerac. I was a big fan of the film from the early 90s with Gérard Depardieu, and the book itself didn't disappoint, or the play itself didn't disappoint, and this is translated by Christopher Fry. So that, up till this moment in time, is that. Those are all the Oxford World Classics I own, which is probably quite paltry compared to many of you. But then at least that does allow me to make a video about it, whereas those of you who have hundreds of them would probably struggle to make at least one video. So there we have it. Thank you ever so much for watching. Do let me know in the comments below if there are any Oxford World Classic editions that you particularly like and that you recommend I get over and above any other edition of that particular work. So thanks for watching again. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye bye.